Even Batman makes it okay.
Well done, Polly. Indeed, well said. Okay, I'd like to start off really the speech by thanking everyone for coming. We've got guests here from as far afield as Canada, of course Japan, some people through the magic of the internet that are joining us from Malaysia, but perhaps most amazingly of all, Chris and John have made their way from the Cypher in Industry Close to spend their 5-minute journey all the way up to Edgemont to be with us. So, yeah, so I think a round of applause for Chris and John. I'd also like to thank, of course, Masako and Masanori Miyamoto, Izumi's parents, for having and allowing me to marry such a wonderful daughter as Izumi. If Izumi and I can do as good a job with May as they've done with her, then I, for one, will be a very proud parent indeed. I'd also like to thank you for making the long journey from Japan to be with us today. Of everyone that's in the room here, and well, there's quite a lot of you, Mr. and Mrs. Miyamoto are the only ones really that we spent any time with on the day that we actually got married and signed the marriage papers. So I'm honoured that they've been able to come and join us here in England to take part in the celebrations as well. I must also thank my mum, without whom none of this would really have been possible today. She's been a tower of strength throughout the whole process and was a great help in organising everything that you see and experience as part of today's celebrations. And I'd also like to thank her not just for today, but for supporting me throughout my life. It might be very hard for some of you to believe, but I've not always been this morally superior, fine, upstanding pillar of the community that stands in front of you today. And at those times when my decision-making skills and behaviour have been, let's say, less than optimal, my mum has always stuck by me. She's helped me to make the right decisions to become a better person, and the kind of better person who's able to get a girl as good as Izumi. So thanks to my mum. Now, having thanked my mum, I'd also like to thank Louise, my sister Louise here, who I've got to say has bailed me out more times than I care to think about. Without any request for thanks, any request for recompense, and most importantly, without any word to mum about any of it. Me and Louise are very different in many ways, but we share so much together. We both inherited our dad's sense of humour and love of music, and we both inherited our mum's sort of altruism and culinary skills. Now, thankfully it wasn't the other way around, because Dad couldn't cook to save his life, and my mum's only 2 CDs, the Pretty Woman soundtrack and a Michael Bublé album that someone gave her for Christmas, both of which have never been played. So, but thinking about how my mum and dad were different and how they complemented each other, and by that, I say they complemented each other, I don't mean they were always saying nice things about each other. I mean they were 2 sides of the same coin. But that brings me nicely on to talk about my wife, Izumi. Izumi and I met first time, as you've heard from a couple of speeches already, many years ago in Liverpool, where we shared an amazing 6 months together, and I think it's fair to say I fell deeply in love with her. Sadly, a time came when Izumi had to return to Japan, and I had to remain in Liverpool. And for the next 7 years, well, I didn't quite finish it, but thanks for bringing it up. Anyway, let's go so anyway, I had to remain in Liverpool for other reasons, and for the next 7 years, we were separated by an unfortunately insurmountable distance, and we did lose touch for quite a while. Now, in that time, I pined for Izumi for a long time. She was my first true love, and the thought that I'd lost her forever was by far my biggest regret. Which, when I think of some of the foolish things I've done, biggest regret is quite a title for someone to hold. But then, all of a sudden, a young American student came along and invented something called the Facebook. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with Facebook, it's basically a tool which you use at work for wasting time while concentrating on the screen so that no one knows that you're not doing anything. And I must say, I took to it like a duck to water. I managed to get in contact with lots of people who I've fallen out of touch with, many of whom are here today, and getting me in trouble, Vicky. And one of those was Azumi. Now, when I first noticed that Azumi had become friends with people that we both knew in Liverpool, I spent a long time wondering whether I should get back in contact with her. But after much internal debate and a good kick up the bum from the aforementioned Vicky, I decided that I needed to. So I sent her a message, tentatively, and less than 24 hours later, there was a reply in my inbox, which I subsequently replied to immediately, without any hesitation. This went on for a while, but to cut a very long story short, we stayed in touch, and 5 years later, we were able to meet up. As soon as I saw Azumi again, I knew that my feelings weren't just a romantic fantasy that I had about a girl that I knew at university. I knew I had to spend the rest of my life with her. Now, 3 years later still, I find it hard to truly believe that I'm standing in front of you all telling you this story at our wedding. I'm the luckiest man in the world. Now, on top of that, you've got the most amazing daughter in me, and it feels a bit like all my dreams have come true. And perhaps most amazingly of all, it's all thanks to Facebook. And Vicky. So for the first toast in my speech, I'd like you to join me and raise a glass to Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and Vicky Richter, the girl who encouraged me to get back in touch with her. To Mark and Vicky. Now, for those of you that know Azumi, I don't need to tell you how lovely she is because you already know. But for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting her before today, I'd just like to read out a list for you of the things that I think make her amazing. Sorry, Azumi, you're going to have to help me here. I can't quite read your writing. Now, all jokes aside, today I'm not just marrying Azumi. I'm also marrying May, in the manner of speaking, because the two of them come as a package. I can't even begin to tell you how happy May makes me. I was a little nervous at the start about whether I was going to be any good as a father, but I'm quite pleased to tell you, I think I'm taking to it quite well. And I must admit, it is quite nice not to be the only one in the house whose brain and sense of humour works on a 6-year-old level. Now, both Azumi and May drive and motivate me to be a better person on a daily basis. And rarely an hour goes by where May doesn't do something that makes me laugh out loud. My daily routine now tends to include all manner of things that I would never have dreamed that I'd get up to before, from the how many grapes can you put on your face game, to the nightly country music dance-off before bedtime. You lucky people might even be getting a little peek at that later on in the evening, so brace yourselves. The three of us share some quite different qualities, but like my own mum and dad, we fit together perfectly and we work as a team. A team which Azumi is definitely the captain of. So far, I seem to have managed to hold it together pretty well, which is a miracle, but bear with me because that might change in the next few minutes, because I'd like to just finish with a few words about my dad. Now, time takes away those who are dear to us, but we never ever forget them, and we can only acknowledge them on days like today. I'm so glad that Azumi was able to meet my dad when we were back in Liverpool, and I know my dad was very fond of her and would be a very proud man if he was here today. I'm not a particularly religious man, I'm afraid, but I do like to think that my dad, wherever he is now, had something to do with the circumstances that led to me and Azumi meeting up again, and the way that things have turned out. And I always feel a bit like he's watching over me. Although I hope he missed most of the stag do. This does remind me that there are a few people who I seem to have lost the bit that I really hate, which tells me to thank them, so I'm going to freestyle that bit. But there are a few people that I need to thank outside of the things that I've spoken about before. First off, my best man Ben, who organised the weekend, which, for the standard I was talking about, can be described as nothing other than monumental. I don't think we'll go into a great deal of detail on it, but needless to say, everyone here knows what went on, and it was fantastic. So thanks to Ben. And I'd like to thank, of course, Tim for the fantastic guitar playing that you heard earlier. You're going to hear a little bit more of that later on. I'd like to thank my mum for constantly reminding me that I need to thank Auntie Glenda for the flowers. I'd like to thank Auntie Glenda for the flowers. Now in addition, of course, I'd love to thank Matt, who most of you heard his kind words earlier, and did a fantastic job of guiding us all through the ceremony that we did earlier to exchange rings. And if I've forgotten anyone, then please blame the person who printed out my speech. Of course, Yardley for helping me with the speech itself, which I'm doing now, and Daniel for making me look quite so dapper today. It turns out you really can polish a turn. So on that note, I'm very near to the end of my speech. As I say, I'm so happy that the Zoom was able to meet my dad. Back to the words about Tony. And I do feel like he watches over me. I really do on a daily basis, although, like I say, hopefully not watching Stack Do. But now, any time now when Izumi and I get a bit of luck, we tend to look up to the sky and say thanks, Tony, because we feel like he looks over us a bit. So for my final toast of the speech, I'd like everyone to stand and raise a glass to my dad, Tony Horrobin.
Tony Horrobin.
That's the end. Just one more thing before we move on. As I say, I was thanking Ben earlier for being my best man, and you're going to hear a few words from Ben now. Now, I believe it is traditional for the best man to go in on the groom a little bit during this speech, so I think it's probably quite a good time just to remind Ben that less than 1 month from now, he'll be standing where I am, and I'll be standing where he is. So go easy on me, mate. Alright, thank you very much.